And our first speaker is going to be CARMELITA from Washington, D.C.
My name is CARMELITA and I'm an addict. And I'm truly grateful to God for allowing me to be here with you in Massachusetts for one of the situations that they told me early on there would be a lot of first time things happening in my life. Had it not been for Narcotics Anonymous, I would not be in Massachusetts. I want to make you aware that I'm really nervous. I kind of got started up in my room. And I do this on a regular basis, but sometimes it's almost like it's the first time I've ever done it. And maybe because there were some things on my mind and I needed to share with a few of my friends right here about how to do what I need to do, and also to remember that I live by principles and not through personalities. So I want to say to the convention committee, I appreciate not only the invitation to come here to share with you, but that somebody on this committee or however remembered CARMELITA. And before I got to Narcotics Anonymous, nobody knew who I was, nobody cared who I was, and they certainly didn't have me on their memory list. So I want to say thank you to this committee, and I know it's been a lot of hard work. And sometimes I hope that each person in Narcotics Anonymous get an opportunity to perform this service. Believe me, it takes a lot of sweat, tears, and struggle to get to this very moment. I also want to thank the young lady who came with me, because I don't travel a lot today by myself due to physical circumstances in my life. And I want to say to Lilia, I really appreciate not only the company, but also what I learned when I first got here in this program is that it's more important to give than to receive. And I tell you, some of you don't know, we traveled out of Atlantic City this year in one of the worst snowstorms we've had on the East Coast. And she drove all the way. So thank you. I also want to say thank you to my friends that are here in Massachusetts that I met at other conventions or other activities. And when you get here and kind of get that first hug and somebody tell you it's going to be all right, it just kind of makes it all right at that very moment. So for each of you who gave me that special hug and that kind of attention that I needed to let me know that it was okay to be here in Massachusetts. Believe it or not, I didn't get to Narcotics Anonymous because I was outside playing little games with smaller people than I, and people have always been smaller than me. I didn't get here because I had a dysfunctional family either. I don't know why, but we seem to have gotten real classic when it comes to sharing, and everybody's coming from a dysfunctional family. I was the only individual that I knew that was dysfunctional. And that started way back there as a little kid, where I used to sit up under the tree and read and try real hard to be alone. I had no kind of intention on being with people. I felt safer being alone. I went through the regular school routine, and I came from a little town in Maryland, And all we did there was to go to school, go to church, and we stayed home a whole lot. And I didn't know a whole lot about nothing, and the least amount about the world and becoming an adult, because there were certain things you just didn't talk about in our household. And I began to understand one thing about myself, if I didn't know a whole lot, was I didn't know how to talk to people, because there wasn't a whole lot of talking going on. People might have said good morning or good afternoon. There wasn't a whole lot of hugging and that kind of stuff. We grew up as a family who had basic needs, and those needs had to be taken care of, so it was all about going to work. And I understood that. My mother and father worked all their lives, and they taught us how to work. And that probably was the one thing that kept me, I guess, not from going to jail and a few other things, because I understood I had to work. And I did just that. At the age of 19, there was a decision made. I wasn't going to go back to college, and I'd gotten a job at a place where there were a lot of men, and it was Andrews Air Force Base, and I thought that was so exciting. And I told my father and my mother what I wanted to do now was make a little money and just live my life. And the first place that I went when I felt like I kind of could get away was a little joint. You know, they used to call it Moonlight Inn. And this place was like a big old barn with sawdust on the floor and a lot of crazy people just like me. And what we did, we got busy. And they had that stuff called Old Crow and Old Taylor and Old Fitzgerald, and when you get a little bit of a swallow down your throat, your stomach begins to feel warm, and I just broke loose. I had been a child that was disciplined all her life, and this was my opportunity. And what happened was, I was able to do this day in and day out. You know, I could go there every night and then get home in time enough to take a bath, shower, and go to work, and somebody picked me up from the job, and we headed right back to Moonlight Inn. And I thought that was okay. I also felt like I was having fun. And then I kind of thought I was, you know, my own adult. And my mother and father, who had always been two caring people, they kind of learned about what I was doing, and they had to come back to the country to get me. And they brought me into Washington, D.C., and I tell you, when I came to Washington, it was almost like going to Hollywood. I had never seen so many lights. I'd never seen so many people. And they didn't go to bed in Washington. You know, in Maryland, they went to bed by 9 o'clock. And when I got to the city, I said, wow, you know, this is great. And I got a job through the Government Employment Service, so I thought this was a real good job, but it was working in a hot dog stand called Ben's Chili Bowl. And it was right in the red light district, you know. So I got to meet some real neat people. Prostitutes, pimps, hustlers, gamblers, people that just stayed up all night and just had a good time. And that's when things really got good and plenty for me. Because one day this guy walked in the chili bowl, and he said something like, "Hi, baby." And this guy said the magic words. I fell immediately in love, and we were off to the races. Now, I don't know about any other women, but that's a real important part of my life, because that was all a guy had to say was, "Hi, baby." And I was willing from that point on. So I don't have to go into a whole lot of detail, but it's important that I share that, because I know today that there's been a change. Okay? So me and this guy hooked up, and I didn't know what he was about, and I really didn't care. And one day I walked in the bathroom in the apartment where I was living, and he was in there, and I saw what he was doing, and I just kind of backed out, shut the door, and never mentioned it. And then one day it came that this guy and I moved in together, and I wasn't feeling good, and somebody made a suggestion that if I had a little bit of that stuff, that little white powder that they was working with, that I would feel better. And I'm going to tell you what happened. I mainlined heroin, and I damn sight felt better. I did not have any problem with it. I wasn't upset about what happened, you know, the upchucking or nothing else. It made me feel good. And what happened was, it was supposed to be that one-time kind of a situation. But every day that he went out to do his hustle, I went to his stash, and I did what I wanted to do. 7 days, I was addicted to heroin. And it wasn't no thing like I knew what was going on. I really thought I was pregnant. And you know, you kind of wake up sweating and upchucking, and we just kind of sit there and looked at each other. And then the next thing he said was, you're going to get one more, and that's it. And of course, that one more went on forever. That was a door opening in my life that I had no idea of what was going to transpire. I really, really didn't. And what I did was, a day at a time, I just got strung out on life. And that meant I went to any length, did whatever I had to do, didn't matter to me day or night or whenever. I just took care of my business. And it got to the point where that was not working. See, that good feeling had kind of faded out. And I started getting sick, so I went to a few doctors. And then I went to the methadone clinic. And then I went to a few more doctors. And then I started meeting some other people that were doing other things. So what I'm talking about here is, standing before you is a garbage head who was for like 15 years trying to change the way I felt. I changed partners. I changed from males to females. I changed my address. I changed everything, and nothing worked, because I was the author of my book. I don't know if y'all know anything about that, but I was writing my script, honey. And it was real painful, so I was getting real dynamic. You know how you really tell it. And somewhere along the line, I began to just kind of forget that there was a family, that there were 2 kids, that there had been a husband, that there were many people in my life that I no longer ever saw or talked to. And I became that isolated, insignificant, pitiful, sorry individual that I did not want to live with. And I had no place to take me. I started going to hospitals on a regular basis and getting checked in for all other kinds of diagnoses except the one of addiction. They admitted me whenever I went, because I know I sounded real persuasive. You know, like they understood I was in pain, and they knew I was depressed. You know, I can tell you a good story and get you almost in my depression, you know. I had a few doctors that would sit in their office, and while I'm telling them how bad I felt, we would kind of like share a glass of wine together. It got like that. And then I couldn't go home because the pain was too great, but the shame was even worse. So they didn't see me. I just kind of sent money home for the kids. I kind of sent Christmas and all those other holidays home through a package or what have you. I couldn't go home. And I'm going to tell you what happened to me. There was a night that I was on a bus, supposedly going somewhere. And when it got to this very corner that I'd always kind of been a real favorite, I guess some of y'all had a corner, you know, and I got off that bus without intending to. The right guy was standing there at that corner, and he said the right thing. I got what you need, so come on. And we went in this little rat, roach-infested room with 5 other junkies just like me. And we used. And we used. And we used. And you know what? It didn't happen. I sit there in absolute, I can't even describe the pain. And everybody else was okay. I had no idea at that time that my God was allowing me to have a real rude awakening. And nothing worked all that night. The next morning, the sunshine came up, and I just kind of knew I had to get out of this place. And somebody had always said to me, if you ever wanted help, all you got to do is ask for it. And I caught me a cab, and I went someplace that very morning. And that place was St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which is the mental institution in the Washington area. And I knew that I needed to be there. I had no reservations about needing help. I had not heard words like surrender, but I knew I needed some help. And those people allowed me to come in there. But what they did was they had an interview. They told me to be there at 7:30 in the morning, and I got there promptly on time. And when I walked in the door, they said, give me your pocketbook. And I couldn't understand why they'd ask for my pocketbook. And then they told me something that I know I have to share in these rooms, and a lot of people kind of get upset when you tell the truth. But they said, bitch, go have a seat in the corner. And I said, ho-ho. But I tell you what, I had a seat in that corner. And they had a sign in that corner that said, don't blow this chance. And they let me sit there for 8 hours. They served me 2 slices of bread, a carton of milk, and a pad of butter for my lunch. And I kind of knew I was in trouble. Because the only way I could associate with that was like in a concentration camp or prison. And I hadn't had that experience, not at least knowledge-wise. But finally they interviewed me. And when they opened up that door, that interview room, I'm going to tell you what I did. And I don't know about the rest of y'all in here, but I fell to my knees. And they didn't have to ask me nothing. I begged those people to help me. I don't know about folks coming into Narcotics Anonymous, but I was in extreme pain. I was so ashamed. I was depressed. I was angry. I was hostile. I was a lot of things, and I knew I was in the right place. It's just something in your gut to tell you when it's really okay. And I was not going to get up, no matter what they said to me, and leave that building. And they accepted me. And that was the beginning of something that I had no idea was going to occur in my life. I stayed in this place for 16 months, and I followed directions from the very day that I got there. And guess what? I'm still following directions. They said something about thinking in our book today. I stopped thinking when I went in that program, because my best thinking was what got me there in the first place. So I stayed there and did what I had to do in that program, and I struggled and I fought, and I'm talking about inward and emotionally, because the tug of war was never ever outside of me. It was inside of me, and I never knew what to do. When I came out, I went back to my old job, and I knew I had to try to find me another one because I worked at the methadone clinic. Where else would a dope fiend work but at the methadone clinic? And then I got a job where I'm still presently employed, and that's at the VA hospital in Washington, D.C. And when I got that job, a guy walked up to me and said, are you an alcoholic? And I never did answer, but he said, come on, go to this meeting with me. And I went to that meeting. And I walked in the rooms of that meeting, and if nothing else happened, I knew I was in a safe place. And they said, have a seat. Would you like a cup of coffee? And the last thing I remembered was they said, keep coming back, CARMELITA. And I did that. Some people get disturbed in these rooms when you tell the truth, but that's how it happened for me. And then I finally got told to go to a particular meeting. And it was on the other side of town, and I walked in this meeting, and on that very day I met the woman who became my sponsor. And I'm going to tell you what happened. You know, they called on me in that meeting, and I shared, right? I talked about Mommy, Daddy, the dog, and everybody else. And then they called on this woman right after me, and I guess they kind of knew what to do. And she said, Carmelita, your mommy, your daddy, the dog, and ain't none of them folk here. You are. And you need to start talking about you. And then she started talking about her. And I'm going to tell you what I saw. I saw his infinite wisdom working at that very moment. Because, see, she got to talking about her pain. She got to talking about being out there in the street. And she talked about all the negative things that had happened to her and how bad she felt. And then all of a sudden it looked like the room just turned around. And the next thing she was saying, I'm so grateful to be here. And I said, what? You know? But she had had that experience, see. And that's what some of us don't recognize is those that are actually having the experience, when they talk about it, you know it. And I knew it. And I said, will you be my sponsor? She said, I'll be your friend. And I got in her hind pocket. And still to this very day, she's the best thing that ever happened to me. And guess what? One day she said, Carmelita. I said, yes, Doe, what we going to do today? She said, we're going to call out there to California and get that little white book. And I said, what little white book? And we got that little white book, y'all. That same book we got today. And we started a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. My sponsor, a probation officer, two other addicts, and we sit in this courthouse for months, 6, 8, sometime we got lucky and 10 was in the room. But you know what? We sit there and we shared and we talked, and we had a meeting in the room. Then we had a meeting outside the room. We had a meeting in the parking lot. We had a meeting at my parking lot, and it was like nobody really wanted to go home. And I'm going to tell you what, I had a lot of meetings outside of the meetings. That's where I got my best help, because we could really get down in. See, we could call all them funny names, you know, all them MFs and all that good stuff. You know, you could get the feeling out, you know, and didn't have to worry about what somebody else was going to say, because some of us were still afraid to talk about ourselves. But we got busy in that town. And we had a lot of fellas that came out of different programs and got involved with us, and they started going to churches and finding other places we could have meetings. Narcotics Anonymous was what I needed, because I needed a way to express myself. And when I got here to this program, I really didn't know how to talk. Remember what I said, I was that kid that was always isolated. I used most of the time all by myself. And when I got in this program, I needed to get out of that spot that I was in. And through the grace of God and these beautiful people, things began to happen for me. Now, one thing I know that was most important, and I share this especially with the women I sponsor. When I first heard my sponsor talk, she talked about the 12 steps. She talked about having a sponsor. She talked about going to meetings. And one of the things that she says, Carmelita, no matter what, just be honest. Now, that was one thing that became very evident to me, that I really, really need to listen. Because everybody wasn't talking about sponsors. Everybody wasn't talking about the 12 steps. And everybody wasn't talking about honesty. Okay? See, there are a lot of things that occur in meetings even to this day. And one of the best topics that we got in Washington, D.C. is relationships. Everybody in a relationship. But when I came in, they wasn't talking about that. They was telling me to get my ass to a meeting. And every morning at 5 o'clock, my sponsor would call my house, and she'd say, good morning, sunshine. Not that I liked being awakened at 5, but that was a way to get my day started. She would call me at 12 noon and tell me to turn on my radio, at a particular station because it was a 15-minute prayer, and I needed that. Every day on my job, I needed that. And then she'd call me around about 4:30 and say, I'll meet you at the meeting. Now, I want you to know that I led a very, very simple life coming into this program because that's what I did. I went to work, I went to meetings, and I went home, folks. And then my sponsor kind of gave me a little help. She told me one day, she said, you know, you ain't no hot tomato. You know, ladies. I just want to make sure y'all hear that. And I had to go home and starting what I call today accountability. And then there was a day after I got clean, and I'm not just talking about just away from the drugs and the booze, but I started getting clean in other areas. And I was able to go and get my 2 children. And I don't talk about that in my using because they wasn't a part of my life. I still don't talk about my husband because that was one of them situations where God said, hi, baby. You know? And 2 months after we were legally married, we were legally separated. So I didn't have a whole lot to talk about with him, okay? And then I started in these rooms really sharing my gut. I told people how I felt, you know, frustrated, angry. Most of my days in this program for 2 years, I was angry. There was no joy coming out of my life, or at least I didn't see it. And I had to share this. Then after about 2 years in this program, something else came up. I started feeling horny. And my sponsor said, you talk about it. I said, in the meeting? She says, talk about it. And I'm going to tell y'all something. I talked about mine in the meeting because that's what they told me this was all about. And I didn't have to worry about what people were going to do. All I needed to do was let Carmelita know what was going on with her. And I'm glad I did talk about it. I got a lot of information. After being here about 2.5 years and trying to deal with what my sponsor told me, I went to a meeting one day and I sat down beside this guy and I said, oh, got a few minutes? I'd sure like to talk to you about something. And another guy had asked me out on a date, and I was trying to share with him. I really didn't know what to do. And he made this real beautiful remark. He said, well, if there was anybody in this fellowship that I would have anything to do with, you would be the one. So you know what we did? And shortly after that, I got a phone call at the club, and it just happened to be his wife saying, Carmelita, why is it my husband have to be everywhere you are? And I said, honey, you don't have to worry about it. Because at that point in time in my life, I had gained a conscience. I did not have that plan, but I'm going to tell you something about behavior. I need to help a lot of the women I work with understand. It just don't change like that. The change will come about 9 times out of 10 when you have the experience or you witness the experience. And I had the experience, and I knew I had to get real busy with some work. So that's when my 4th step started. And I'm going to tell you, folks, if you don't do it like the book said, get that pad, that pencil, say them prayers, and sit. And it'll all come. And my sponsor told me when it got too painful, just close the book for tonight, thank God, and go to bed. And I'm going to tell you, I wrote about 3 areas of my life: sex, resentment, and anger, and I took care of everything. All my issues were in those 3 areas. And when they tell you about writing it, what I understood, if I wrote my inventory, then I could see exactly what had happened in my life. You know, you go to meetings, you hear something and you'll forget it. You see it and you'll remember it. When you do it, you'll understand it. And I know that's one way I've been able to communicate with a lot of women, because I'm not telling them anything other than what I've experienced. And that's what's important to me in this program about being honest. After I kind of got that 4th step completed and I was ready to do my 5th, my sponsor said, no, not with me. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do with this? She said, you'll find you somebody. Because my sponsor is very open. She'll share hers, yours, and everybody else's in a meeting. And I didn't know whether I was ready for that. So I found somebody. And as I understand in this program, God will present it to you in time, not before. And when this gentleman I did my 4th step with was someone I had known prior to coming into fellowship. And he had been here for a while. And he was able to sit there and allow me to come clean. I'm talking about real clean. And he did not make fun of me. He did not poke at me. All he said was, I can identify. And then he told me what I needed to do. He said, we can burn this, and then you can get busy with identifying your character defects. 6 and 7 step, I know it's difficult for a lot of people. We kind of know we got character defects, but I don't know how many people are really addressing it. It was 2 or 3 years in this program that I'm working 6 and 7, because life now is bringing me the experiences, and I'm beginning to understand how those character defects will kick up. It tells us a lot in the literature that some of us will remain in the grips of the disease because we ain't willing to let go of them character defects. See, when it comes to that stuff like lust, it ain't brought me nothing but pain and shame. And God can have it. You can have it. I don't care who has it. I know I don't need it. When it comes to that kind of dependency like I had with my mother, I just wasn't willing to cut the umbilical cord. But I tell you what, I like feeling free today. And I knew that this program was going to allow me to do that. When it got so that I was able to move on, I began that list of the people that I had harmed. And the people I knew were my children, my parents, my family, a lot of debtors. I owed people a lot of money coming into this program because I had made a lot of loans. I didn't go out and rob and all that kind of stuff, but I went to loan companies and got it legally and then never paid them back. You know, so I had a lot of work to do in that area when I got here. And I was able to go to a meeting and share that. And then somebody told me, Carmelita, you left somebody off that list. And I couldn't imagine who it was. And I had left myself off that list. I had done me more harm than anybody ever thought of doing. And I had to find a way to forgive me. And in this program, that certainly truly is important. So I was able to do just that. Put me on that list. And even to this very day, that is one issue that I am still working with. My sponsor told me when it comes to making amends, please do not stretch out here on your own. Y'all hear what I said? There was pain in my life even in recovery. And that I had been with a married man. There was no need me even thinking I could go to this woman and say, I'm sorry that I was with your husband. That woman probably would have blown my brains out. And then if you don't read the step, you may not understand it. It says you don't want to do harm to yourself or anybody. So you're going to have to wait on God. And I did. And he made that available time for me to make amends to my parents. And I want you to know that both of them are no longer with us physically, but with me spiritually. I was able to go into therapy and get some help. And one day I went to my mother's house and she was there alone. And I had not ever witnessed her being home alone. And I just kind of shut the door, locked it, and I said, we got to talk. And I was able to sit there and share with my mother. The woman who I thought had hated me my entire life because she was always whipping my ass. And I couldn't understand that. Or she was always telling me, you got to do better. You got to do better. And she told me one thing. She said, Carmelita, you were the one pregnancy that I really, really wanted. And I want y'all to know that that woman opened up some doors in my life that was unbelievable. It began to happen that I began to feel myself growing. I could look in the mirror once again and not be saddened by who I saw in that mirror. And God knows that's a gift here in this program. When we got down to that 10th step, continually taking inventory, believe me, folks, I have to do that. You know why? Because I came up here with some thoughts on my mind about what I was really going to tell a few people. Y'all hear me? But I had to talk to some folks, and I also had to pray before I came downstairs. And that was, God, please forgive me. Because sometimes I've wanted to hurt people. And I'm talking about physically. And I was that kind of a person coming up. I fought a lot. I really did. Every day of my life, my mother was coming to get me from school because I was around there tearing up somebody's ass. Ain't never had no problem with none of them men because I made it perfectly clear. We'll go blow to blow here. I saw enough in my life with women getting whipped to death, and I was not going to deal with that. So that was all right. But I pray every day for forgiveness, and I also try to look over my day so I can make some improvement when God grants me the next one. The 11th step was always a step that I understood because I had that kind of sponsor who understood how to sit still and hurt. When we come into this program, for some reason, I guess all of us think it's going to be all right because we stopped using. But then life begins. And the junkie priest in New York said, that's what life is, pain. But on the other side of that pain is always some joy. So I had to learn how to sit still and hurt. I had to learn how to go through things. You understand? Not get up and run, close the book, shut the door, but sit there and allow myself to experience it. And I'm finding out it ain't that bad. I used to have 25 bad days and maybe 5 good. Now I'm having 25 excellent days. And every now and then one of them 5 will step up. But then my sponsor say, just open up the door and tell Slewfoot to get the hell on out. And that's what I have to do. When it comes to making a conscious contact, folk, I just want to share this with you. I do not deal with that osmosis. I go straight to my sister or my brother. And believe me, God is always there. I understand this thing about togetherness, unity, caring, being so blessed in my life. Some of you will not know the people that I've met in this program, the places I've been, the times when I've walked in and got treated like a queen. You know, they picked me up at airports and limousines, and they done put me in them hotel rooms where they turn the bed back and a little mint sitting there. And whatever it is I want, I can have. You know what I'm saying? They will ask me to come to various conferences outside of the fellowship and share my experience. You all just don't know what this program done for me. I came here real pitiful. Ooh, Lord, I was so pitiful. I had everybody in the meeting cry. You know, until one day a guy said, Carmelita, every time you speak, I want to cry. I said, do it sound that bad? He said, yes, honey. Yes, Lord. Okay? But I had to learn how to stand up and do a little walking, and this program gave me the strength because they done walked with me through everything. Narcotics Anonymous has been the answer. The 12th step tells us that we have to go out and help others. You got to reach, but you got to have that spiritual awakening. See, there are a lot of folks that don't really understand that. They don't understand how you got to work the previous 11 before you can do 12. Because sometimes when you go to an addict, you know what the first word they got to say to you is F you. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say. and I work in a treatment program, and they come in with their image high and wide. But you see, after you've had that spiritual awakening, God will tender every heart that you get close to. And I have been blessed in that way. I have received numerous gifts, and I'm not talking about materialistic stuff. I'm talking about women who have stayed clean. I'm talking about men who have walked with other diseases in this program and didn't use, in extreme pain. One of my children passed, but he walked tall before he left out of here. And he would tell you in the meetings, I don't want to hear that whining and crying. Get on up and live your life. And he did just that. He represented himself well. And that's what Narcotics Anonymous will give you. See, this is no longer something to kind of like take lightly. Narcotics Anonymous is powerful. And it's going to get you too if you're in here playing. Sometimes we don't understand why things happen to us the way they do. Because God is the one that's in charge, y'all. Y'all ain't got to worry about us. Because he coming home to you. All y'all that's got these kids out here, they coming home to you. You're going to look up one day, they're going to be on your front doorstep saying, Mommy, Daddy, here I am. There are a lot of things that's going to come up. And if you ain't in here doing what you got to do, you will not have the support. See, one of the things that I believe about telling the truth is just what my sponsor said. It'll set you free. And that's what the program of Narcotics Anonymous promised each and every one of us is freedom. And I think more freedom from self than anything else. I have been able to enjoy life. I've been able to deal with the enormous pain, physical pain. The emotional pain is not as big as it used to be because you know what? I ain't trying to get in there and mess nothing up. See, I don't go walking off with all these great dreams and ideas without conferring with someone. And I tell that to anybody in here. Whatever it is you want to do, you better share it, even if it's going to get your feet looked at. Tell somebody, because you may get something at the doctor's that you may not quite understand. I'm somebody that believed in what I have here, and that's the gift of life. And what I want to this day is to give to God a life that has been lived, that I am able to do what I never thought that I could, and that is to give unselfishly, to give with no strings attached, to give and walk on away and know that the work has been done. When I don't have to turn around and kind of wait to see if somebody's saying, okay, but know that the work has been done. I am a happy woman today. I really am. You know what I'm saying? And I had a few birthdays in here, quite a few, you know. And I tell you, one time they gave me one when I turned 50. That's going to be excellent for those of you who reach it. Because they had a dinner party, you know, all my friends. And then they kind of turned the lights down low, and the next thing I knew, here come one fine man. I enjoyed myself. And I've learned the difference in the mind and the behind. You understand that? It's been real good. They told me in here, whatever kind of help I need, somebody will be there. I have moved every 2 years since I've been in this program. Somebody been there to move me. Okay? I've had all kinds of situations, and all I had to do was pick up the phone, and somebody was there. So it's only for me to do what has already been done for me. So sometimes we have to kind of stretch out there on blind faith. We have to sacrifice. But the one thing that I encourage everybody to do, and that is to grow in love with those of us that God has blessed to get here to Narcotics Anonymous. I just want to thank all of y'all for listening to me, and I'm not going to do what I'm not supposed to do here. But I really try to share my gratitude. I've been going to conventions ever since I got here, and I'm going to tell y'all, I just find this overwhelming each time I go to one. And I want to just say thank you in the one way that I know how, and hope I don't offend anyone here tonight. Because of you, there's a song in my heart. Because of you, my life has had its start. Because of you, the sun will shine, the moon and stars will say you're mine forever and ever to part. I only live for the strength and hope you give. It's heavenly to know you're so near. Because of you, my life is now worthwhile, and I can smile because of you. Thank you.